to do thus far. Meanwhile, there's, still swirlings about what could happen, in realignment moving forward with the ACC. They're kind of the ones that seem to be on the clock right now in terms of Florida State's unhappiness after the college football playoff snub. And, man, we can go undefeated in this league, but we can't make it. I still don't know how that's the SEC's fault. That's more the committee bending that than it's the ACC's a culprit for the committee's decision. But when you're mad at the conference, it's kind of like when Texas and Oklahoma started blaming the Big 12 for every shortfall that they had.
Yeah.
That's kind of what is now happening with Florida State and perhaps others of like anything that goes wrong, it's the ACC's fault. But that's kind of what seems to be up next. There's also, however, still the threads of the Pac-2 and the Pac-12 and what all that's going to look like. And we've, gone into a little bit of detail as far as the continuing court battle with Washington State, Oregon State, and the 10 former schools that are all going to be scattered over the Big 10 and Big 12 moving forward. But there was questions about, well, what are they going to do next season? What are Washington State and Oregon State going to do? There's questions about, who are they going to play? And then we saw where, Washington State did announce that they were going to end up playing and they were going to continue on with the Apple Cup. And so that was all great. But what about the rest of those games? And this Mountain West merger, is that going to happen? Well, we now know the full-blown schedules for 2024 for Oregon State and Washington State. That came out today, and they will, in fact, both be playing their rivals, as you're going to get Oregon and Oregon State, and you're going to also, as we already knew, get Washington and Washington State. But one key part of this schedule for Washington State is that Texas Tech was involved, as they agreed to schedule a home-and-home series with Washington State, and in doing so have rescheduled their expected trip to Autzen Stadium to play Oregon next September. That was a game that was going to happen on September the 7th. It was going to be the second game of their home and home. And we saw how that played out in Lubbock with Oregon winning a really tight game. But because of all the shuffling around, that game will now take place in 2033. So Texas Tech, supposed to go to Eugene next season, will now not go to Eugene until 2033. So what does the college football landscape, you think, look like here? I've seen a lot of unhappy Red Raider fans that feel like they got kind of the short end of the stick in all of this and being cooperative, because now, I mean, what does college football in 2033 even look like? And there's also a lot of people that I would imagine that already bought plane tickets hoping to go to Eugene, Oregon next summer. And now you got 10 years until they're actually going to play that game.
Maybe you just change it to Pullman, Washington.
Change it to Pullman, Washington, because they will now go to Washington State on September the 7th instead, and they will also host the Cougars
in the Mike Leach Classic.
In the Mike Leach Classic. They will host the Cougars in 2032. So they were scheduled to go to Oregon. Because of all the shuffling the schedules and trying to get all that right, they agreed to help move things around. So they've bumped back that Oregon trip to 2033, and they will now go to Pullman, Washington to help out the Cougars and fill out that schedule. And so what does that look like? Well, for Washington State, they will open up with Portland State, and then we'll have Texas Tech. They will then have the Apple Cup with Washington in week 3. And then there's where the Mountain West comes in. They will play San Jose State. They will travel to Oregon State. Then they will play host to Utah State, Wyoming, and Hawaii, and have road games against San Diego State, Boise State, New Mexico, and Fresno State. And I saw somebody make this comment, and I made this comment a few weeks ago of like, what's the record for how many schools with state in their name has ever occurred on a schedule? And I'm pretty sure we're going to see that with Washington State, Oregon State as a result of these 2024 schedules. But now we know the Mountain West Conference opponents, and thank you, Jack, for getting that up there. Now you will see that Oregon State and Washington State are not included on that top row because they're not officially Mountain West Conference teams. But you will see the Beaver logo and the Cougar logo dotted throughout, and you can spot it there. Now the dates are not official, but we now know for 100% certainty, and we kind of already knew it anyways, that they were going to be playing a Mountain West schedule next season. So any thoughts of like they're jumping into with the Big 12? I mean, they've moved on along, and based on what we talked about yesterday and the information Smokey has, I think the Big 12 at this point is kind of just sitting back and not so much looking west as they are very much looking east like everybody else is right now, and just kind of waiting to see what might happen out there and what an upcoming Florida State challenge, which he also talked about. That's very much seems to be coming down the pipeline, what that challenge of the grant of rights here in the next perhaps few weeks could look like. And I think everybody in college football is got some interest level in this, but there you go. Washington State, I just told you their schedule for next season. I'll get to Oregon State in a second. But what are your thoughts on getting this solidified here?
I think it's great. I think it's great for the Mountain West. I think I'm relieved for Washington State and Oregon State as they now continue to navigate the legal minefields of which is going to get worse because they're withholding money. So that's now probably gone from contentious.
Yeah.
Also, on the heels of this, the Mountain West is working with them to join the basketball conference for that year.
Bring that up. That also came out today. Apparently, there's now the talks, and you were wondering, okay, well, if they're going to do this Mountain West agreement in football, what about all of the other sports that are going on? What is that going to possibly look like? And there was a report, and I want to make sure that I get the right person for that.
I think it's John Rothstein.
Yeah, I think probably among others at this point, saying that they are working on a basketball schedule for 24-25. So that is now underway. And let's see here. Yeah, it was John Rothstein. I want to make sure we got that from CBS Sports in discussions to join the league for the 24-25 college basketball season. But it is interesting that it's all just for next year, right? Like they're kind of just taking this piece by piece. And again, I think that probably has a lot to do with just nobody really knowing what to expect beyond next season. I mean, how the heck could you be in the prediction game much without just saying something obvious like, well, the SEC will be strong in the next few years, or the Big Ten will be strong. We kind of know all of that, but beyond that, if you're not amongst those schools, and even they have some questions, it's hard to know what to plan for beyond 2024.
Well, I would say that they're also looking east, right? So they're also thinking about where they can be, when that shakes. Look, the ACC's already gone and added, 2 schools out there. Mm-hmm. And if it gets to the point of where there's another seismic shakeup, especially for that conference, Oregon State and Washington feel the best about their credentials and maybe being able to join and help on a West Coast swing sort of thing. Because right now, the plan for the ACC is to play a lot of stuff in Dallas, which will be great for hotels in Dallas, I guess. But and great for SMU, but it's still going to be kind of strange going forward. But yeah, I think ultimately I think the best thing for Oregon State and Washington State is to be in the Mountain West. But if they could be back in a power conference, if the ACC would even be considered that,
right?
How do you even navigate
Again,
all
we don't
that?
even know what does it look like beyond a year.
The next tier of so the new subdivision that can happen, what does that even look like? Is
that even going to happen? I mean, we don't know that for sure because it's just a proposal by the NCAA and Charlie Baker just to try and cut some of this off at the pass, and a lot of people calling it out for being just that. And so, I mean, there's just too much uncertainty to know really beyond what's right in front of you. And so at least for right now, Oregon State, Washington State, they know what's coming up in football next year, and now working on a basketball schedule with the Mountain West Conference as well. Now, as far as baseball and every other sport, I have no idea what's in store for them. But Texas Tech playing a role in agreeing to move the Oregon series back and adding Washington State. So heading to Pullman next summer will be Joey McGuire and the Red Raiders. And I mentioned Washington State, but meanwhile for Oregon State, they will play previously scheduled games: Idaho State, San Diego State. Oregon is back on now. They also play Purdue and Cal along with Washington State. And then they learned today that Colorado State, San Jose State, and UNLV will all play games in Corvallis, while Air Force, Boise State, and Nevada will be their road games from the Mountain West Conference. So there you go. Oregon State and Washington State now know everything but the dates for next year's 2024 football schedule. Meanwhile, Major League Baseball,